Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. So, I'm going to do a book haul video today. The last time I did one of these was back in August, and I picked up quite a few books since then. So, I think it's high time I did one of these videos. As you can see, I've got a new feline member to my family. This is Whisker, an adorable little kitten. He's just 9 weeks old. Yeah, so he's very much a lap cat, and it's a pleasure to read with him on my lap. I've also got this new microphone here, which I'm testing out for the first time because the old one packed it in. So hopefully this will improve the sound quality because we're having some sound quality issues in the last video. Anyway, let's take a look at the books. So the first thing I should say is just after I filmed the last book haul video, I received a whole bunch of books thanks to my friend Ian, who has his online bookshop, which is called Durdles Books. I've mentioned this before on this channel. I'll link his website to his shop in the video description. So he sells vintage SFF books, and he was clearing out some stock of some second-hand science fiction hardbacks, and he very kindly offered me to look through these boxes and basically choose whatever I wanted to keep. So these are the books which I picked up back then, starting off with 2010 Odyssey 2, the sequel to 2001, A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke, which I read for the first time earlier this year and I loved. So I'm quite tempted to continue the series. This is a very nice hardback, isn't it? I like the cover art. It's in pretty good condition, and this was published, let me see, in 1982 by Granada Publishing. And we've also got the follow-up, which is called 2061 Odyssey 3. Okay, so we've got these two 2001 sequels. I'm quite tempted to continue the series, but I don't know much about these books. So if you've read these, please let me know. Let me know what you think. Is it worth it? So among these books which I picked up from Ian, I've got quite a few ex-library books, and I picked out authors that I've read before and I know I like. So, for example, we've got Christopher Priest here, The Space Machine, which is a kind of H.G. Wells pastiche, I believe. So he takes the ideas in The Time Machine and The War of the Worlds, and he came up with this novel. So it's set in late Victorian times, I think, and the space machine in question is a machine that can travel through time and space. So I think this will be a great read. Looking forward to reading this one. I loved reading Inverted World earlier this year. So this one was originally from Wolverhampton Public Library. And then we've got Robert Silverberg, another author who, everything I've read so far I've loved. This is his short story collection, Parsecs and Parables. I've not read any of his short stories yet, so I'm tempted to read this. This is also ex-library. It's from Dudley Public Library. And this is the story list. Yeah, so I would happily read more Silverberg. We've also got Bob Shaw, Terminal Velocity. I don't know this novel. There's Bob Shaw on the back. But I've read 3 novels by Shaw so far. I've enjoyed them all. Most recently, Other Days of Their Eyes, which is pretty good. So, yeah, I could see myself reading that one. And Clifford Simak, an author who I've not read much of yet. They Walked Like Men. And this one, actually, I'm not sure if it's ex-library. Oh yeah, it's got a withdrawn stamp. I don't know which library it's from. So another Simak novel. I don't really know much about this one. And now we've got some Philip K. Dick. This is a modern print. It's called Paycheck. And this is now a major motion picture starring Ben Affleck and Uma Thurman. Haven't seen that one. It's a little bit misleading because this is not a novel. It's not a standalone story. It's a short story collection. Paycheck is just the first one. There's the list of stories. So Philip K. Dick is another author who I really need to read more of, and I've heard that he's a good short story writer, so I'm going to add that to my collection. And we've also got a Brian Aldiss book here, Moreau's Other Island. This is quite an old one. At some point it was priced 30p, originally from Northfield Library. So I'm guessing this is some kind of follow-up to The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. Interesting cover art. I think you'll agree. And this book, also ex-library, it's pretty old, this one. Looking Backward, 2000 to 1887 by Edward Bellamy. This is an interesting novel. It's a classic. It's a utopian classic. It's a socialist science fiction classic. Originally published way back in 1888. This edition is 1946. It's also ex-library. So, yeah, that's quite an intriguing book, I think. I may give that a try at some point. Still in this part of the haul, I also inherited 3 Alistair Reynolds books. So, first up, we've got this novel, Century Reign. This is a big chunky hardback here. I've not read Century Reign, but this is one of his novels that I do want to read. So, pleased to have picked that up. We've also got a novel which I don't really know much about called On the Steel Breeze. Actually, I think this one is the sequel to this one, Blue Remembered Earth. So I think these 2 books are part of a series, if I'm not mistaken. So, more Alistair Reynolds for the collection. Okay, so there's a book which I left out, I forgot to include, which I also got from Ian. This is Destination Universe. It's another ex-library book of short stories by A.E. Van Vogt, an author I haven't read before, but I'm very tempted to. Lovely vintage copy from 1953. That's the story list. And I'm looking forward to reading this. That completes that part of the haul of books that I inherited from Ian. So I'm going to move on to the next part. So, Philip Jose Farmer is one of my favourite authors, and over the last 3 years or so, I've been gradually collecting his books. I still need to read a lot of them, but one of his books, which has been on my radar for a long time, but I finally managed to pick up a copy, is Day World, and I've got this lovely hardback here, which I ordered online. So this book came out in 1985. It's got amazing wraparound cover art. I love this illustration. I'm just going to check, remind myself who the artist is. Jacket illustration by Tim White. So yeah, this is one of Farmer's later books. It was published in 85. It's a kind of dystopian novel set in a world in which people only live for 1 day of the week in a vastly overpopulated world. They spend the remaining 6 days of the week in suspended animation, and I think that's quite an intriguing concept. So I've finally got hold of this book, and it's 2 sequels because it's actually a trilogy. Dayworld Rebel, so I've got the paperback, and Dayworld Breakup, and these both have Chris Foss cover art. So these make a trilogy, and this series is the next series which I'm planning to read. So what I've been doing recently is interspersing the series that I'm reading with various other books. So at the minute that's Colin Wilson's Spider-World, which I'm on book 3 at the minute. And the next series I'll read will be Dayworld, probably in the new year. There's also this other book, The Grand Adventure, which is a short story collection by Philip Posey Farmer. Because the Dayworld series was actually inspired by a short story that he wrote earlier in the 70s. And I always forget the name of the story, so I have to just check. So the original story, the springboard for this novel, is The Sliced Crosswise Only on Tuesday World. And that story sounds pretty fascinating in its own right. So I wanted to read it. That's why I picked up this book. This is a short story collection. And this is a really nice collection, I think. This is the story list. Okay. It's also got some illustrations. I'll find some to show you. There's one. Oh, here's another one. Different style of illustration. So, I like that. Let's see if I can find another one. Oh, here's another one. Yeah. Everything I've read by Farmer so far, I've really enjoyed. So, I will probably read this book before the year is out. Oh, and I should say, there's also another book in the Dayworld series, which was published much later, posthumously. There's a prequel called Dayworld: A Hole in Wednesday, which was published in 2016, and I also plan to read that. I don't yet have a copy, but I plan to read that as part of the Dayworld series read. All right, moving on. So there are some other books which I picked up here and there over the last 3 months. One of them is this book, this gorgeous hardcover called Beyond and Within Solarpunk. Short stories from many futures, which is a new release. It's an anthology. Flame Tree Press sent me this book for free. They sometimes do this. They sometimes send me new releases or advanced review copies. And they don't even tell me they're doing it. It just arrives in the post, which is very nice of them. So thank you to Flame Tree for sending me this. This is a really nice looking book, isn't it? Look at that shiny cover, coloured pages. I'll show you the contents list. Look at that illustration. I mean, I think the only name I recognise in here is Ken Liu. But this is quite an intriguing list of stories, I think. So, again, another book which is very tempting to dive into. We've also got a few vintage paperbacks which I've picked up in the wild in various charity shops, second-hand bookshops, and so on. I've got 5 of them here. So I finally got hold of a copy of I, Robot, the classic short story collection by Asimov. I found this in Oxfam. I picked up a copy of Silverberg's Hawksbill Station, which is a time travel novel. So 2 things that I love: Robert Silverberg and time travel. Great combination. So I'm sure this will be a good one. The Female Man by Joanna Russ, classic feminist science fiction novel. Another Philip Jose Farmer book, The Lovers. So I think one of his first published stories, it may have been the first one, was The Lovers, which came out in 1952. I think it was a short story or a novella, and that was quite an interesting and controversial story at the time it was published. This is the expanded novel edition from 1961 in very nice condition, I think. Lovely cover art. And The Forever Machine. Again, I found this in the same secondhand bookshop. So this is by Mark Clifton and Frank Riley. Originally published as They'd Rather Be Right. It actually won the Hugo. I think it might have been one of the very first Hugo Awards for Best Novel, which was rather controversial because apparently it's not a very well-written book, but we'll see. I just really like this vintage cover art. Now this is quite old, this one. This edition is 1958. The original story is 1954. So a nice find, I think. Those are all of the vintage paperbacks. In addition to those, I've got 4 more books remaining. These are all modern books. Dark Eden by Chris Beckett. So I picked this book up recently because Chris Beckett came to our local science fiction group to give a talk, to have an interview. This is probably his most well-known book. It won the Clark Award. I got him to sign it. So I've heard good things about Chris Beckett, and I think this may be a good place to start with him. And finally, I just had my birthday. I got a few books for my birthday, including this anthology called Beyond Time. Classic Tales of Time Unwound, edited by Mike Ashley, published by British Library. So, yeah, this is quite a nice anthology. These are all classic time travel stories from the 1880s to the late 1950s. So it says, and again, I'll show you the story list. I think H.G. Wells is the only name I recognise. Oh, an E.C. Tubb. I like this illustration on the front. Yeah, so I think I'll enjoy that. I do like a good time travel story. Finally, we've got 2 more Alistair Reynolds books which were given to me as gifts. Permafrost. It's a novella which is described on the back as a post-apocalyptic time travel adventure. So, sounds like my cup of tea. And finally, Zima Blue, the short story collection which was on my TBR. This was given to me. If you watched my interview with Alistair Reynolds as part of Short Sci-Fi September, you will recall that he talked a bit about this story. So I can't wait to read this. And that completes this book haul. Thank you for watching. Say goodbye to little Whisker here, and I'll see you again soon.